Well, good afternoon, brothers and sisters. I am so happy to be with you today. This, of course, is Readings with Regina, and of course, I am Regina. Now, I'm going to get right into the books today because I have a lot to share with you, and I want to show you some images to really enforce what it is that I am reading about today. This program is called Men in Chains, Women in Ropes, The Runaway, and The Planned. We may not get to the Mistress Who Smiled, but Men in Chains is important. And I want to remind you that we're reading Charles Ball's story, and he was actually on a coffle. And I wanted to show you a picture of a coffle. You've seen it before. I want to show it to you again, just to let some things sink in. Now, this is a coffle. This is a slave coffle. This is what was used when enslavers, entrepreneurial enslavers, would move Black people from one region of the country to another. And you see that they were chained, and I explained the chains on Tuesday, how they were chained and all linked together, so they had to walk in lockstep. Now, this particular picture, you might notice that there are musicians there. There are two violinists. And I don't know if you could see it really well, but there are women in the back. Now, the men would be in chains and the women would be in ropes. And you can see that there's white men on horseback, one to your right, one to your left, and one in the back. And I don't know if you can see it clearly, but they have guns and they certainly have whips. And I want to show you even another picture of a coffle. Now, this is in Washington, D.C., okay? And you might notice to your far left, there is a white couple there. And I want to tell you about this because it's important. Now, in Washington, they really hated to see the coffles because they wanted to hide the fact that politicians, regular workers, farmers were all buying slaves. See, this was supposed to be the land of liberty and inalienable rights. All white men were created equal. So many of the whites did not like to see the coffles coming through their town, but the enslavers who were directing the coffles, I mean, they really didn't care. They didn't care about the images. They didn't care about that. This was their job. Slavery, there were all kinds of businesses created to keep the slave business going. Now, this is another picture of a coffle. And again, you see the violinist in the front of the coffle. And you might remember, if any of you saw the movie 12 Years a Slave, remember that that particular protagonist, that brother, the lead actor, he was a violinist himself. Now, you see in the background here, to the far left, you see the man swinging the whip, okay? So you can imagine the horror of being on a coffle. And I also just want to say this to you too, because I want you to be thinking about this. I want you to be thinking about what it must have been like for those Black men and women to be on a coffle. So I'm going to start my reading right now. Again, this is Charles Ball, his story, and he was on a coffle. Okay. Charles Ball's emotions continued to oscillate, yet slowly he brought his interior more in line with the exterior face that men in coffles tried to wear. Time did not reconcile me to my chains, Ball recalled, but it made me familiar with them, familiar indeed. At night, as everyone else slept, Ball crawled among his fellow prisoners, handling each link, looking for the weak one. He found nothing, but sometimes slave traders were careless, like the ones who were taking Jack Neal down the Ohio River in 1801. They had shackled him to the side of the boat, but one night Neal worked loose the staple that fastened iron chained to wood. He crept along the deck to his sleeping captor, slipped the white man's loaded pistol from his pocket, and blew that white man's brains out. Neil then went to the far end of the boat where another white man was steering and announced, "Damn you. It was your time once, but it's my time now." Neil was recaptured on the Ohio shore and executed. Others had already tried the same thing, such as the enslaved men who, in the autumn of 1799, killed a Georgia man named Spears in North Carolina. He'd spent $9,000 buying people in Northern Virginia, money embezzled from the Georgia State Treasury by a legislator, as it turned out. If Spears had brought the men all the way to the end of the trail and sold them, perhaps the money could have been replaced and no one would have been the wiser. But he forgot to close the lock. One night, and a newspaper reporter reported the Negroes, little n, the Negroes rose and cut the throat of Mr. Spears and of another man who accompanied him. 10 slaves were killed in the course of local authorities' attempts to recapture them. Every enslaved prisoner wanted to rise at one point or another. Properly closed locks disabled that option. Cuffs bound hands, preventing attack or defense. Chains on men also made it harder for women to resist. Isolated from male allies, individual women were vulnerable. One night at a tavern in Virginia's Greenbrier County, a traveler watched as a group of traders put a coffle of people in one room. Then, wrote the traveler, each white man took a female from the drove to lodge with him, as was the common practice. 10-year-old enslaved migrant John Brown saw slave trader Starling Finney and his assistants gang rape a young woman in a wagon by a South Carolina road. The other women wept. The chained men sat silently. Now, I'm going to take a minute here. I want you to consider the psychology of the weeping women and the men, Black men, who were chained and couldn't do anything. I want you to remember that psychological trauma that, in fact, our ancestors had to figure out a way to neutralize so that they could live. Chains enabled another kind of violence to be done as well. Chains saved whites from worrying about placating this one's mother or buying that one's child. Once the enslaved men were in the coffle, they weren't getting away unless they found a broken link. For 500 miles, no one had to call names at night to ensure they hadn't run away. Men of the chain couldn't act as individuals, nor could they act as a collective, except by moving forward in one direction. Even this took some learning. Stumble, and one dragged someone else lurching down by the padlock, dangling from his throat. Many bruised legs and bruised tempers later, they would become one long file, moving at the same speed, the same rhythm, no longer swinging linked hands in the wrong direction. Of course, though, they became a unit. They were not completely united. Relationships began between the enslaved could play out as conflict or alliance or both. People were angry, depressed, despairing, sick of each other's smell and the noises they made, how they walked too fast or too slow, how no one could even piss or shit by themselves. At night, lying too close, raw wrists and sore feet, aching, men in chains or women in ropes, argued, pushed, tried to enforce their wills. John Parker, chained in the coffle as a preteen, remembered a weaker boy named Jeff who was bullied until John came to his aid, helping him stand up against a big teenager who was taking food from the younger children. None of that mattered to the Georgia man as long as the chain kept moving. And Ball led the file down through Virginia into North Carolina at a steady pace. As the days wore on, the men who were never out of the chains grew dirtier and dirtier. Lice hopped from scalp to scalp at night. Black and red lines of scabs bordered the manacles. No matter, the Georgia man would let the people clean themselves before they got to market. In the meantime, the men were the propellant for the coffle chain, which was more than a tool, more than mere metal. It was machine. Its iron links and bands forced the Black people inside them to do exactly what entrepreneurial enslavers and investors, far distant from slavery's frontier, needed them to do in order to turn a $300 Maryland or Virginia purchase into a $600 Georgia sale. At some point after they crossed the Potomac, Ball decided that as long as he was in the coffle, he could only do two things. The first was to carry the chain forward like a pair of obedient, disembodied feet. That, of course, benefited the Georgia man and a whole array of slave sellers, slave buyers, and financiers of the trade, while carrying him further from home and family. And he had to do it whether he wanted to or not. The second thing, unlike the first, was something he could choose whether to do or not. Charles decided to learn about his path because understanding the path might eventually be for his own benefit. So he carefully watched the dirt roads of Virginia and North Carolina pass beneath his feet. He whispered the names of rivers as he lay in irons at night. He noted how far the cornfields had gone toward making ears as May crawled into June. And he tried to draw out the grim man who sat on the horse, clopping beside him. Day after day, Ball emitted a stream of exploratory chatter at the Georgia man's ears, blathering on about Maryland customs, growing tobacco, and his time in the Navy Yard. Enslaved people trained themselves all their lives in the art of discovering information from white people, but Ball couldn't pry loose even the name of the man who played his role of Georgia man. The role already did not have the best reputation among white folks in Virginia and Maryland. Some resented the way coffles, driven right through their town, put the most unpleasant parts of slavery right in their faces. Remember, I showed you the white couple and one of the pictures of the coffle? No, they didn't want to see it. See, they wanted to act like it didn't exist. You see, and the politicians were in on it, thieves were in on it, legitimate jobs where white men could get were in on it. The factories that made the chains were in on it. The factories that made the whips were in on it. I mean, America itself was a product, a producer of slavery. And slavery made American capitalism. Okay, let me get back to the book. Others resented the embarrassment the traders could inflict. In the 1800 presidential election, Thomas Jefferson defeated the incumbent John Adams, and the federal government shifted to the District of Columbia. And so the heart of the United States moved to the Chesapeake. Clanking chains in the capital of a republic founded on the inalienable right to liberty became an embarrassment, in particular to Virginia's political leaders. Northern Federalist newspapers complained that Jefferson had been elected on the strength of electoral votes generated by the 3/5 clause of the Constitution, claiming, in other words, that Virginia's power came not from championing liberty, but from enslaving human beings. Sometimes both Georgia men and the enslaved intentionally irritated that particular sting. A few years after Charles Ball was herded south, a slave trader marched a coffle past the United States Capitol just as a gaggle of congressmen took a cigar break on the front steps. One of the captive men raised his manacles and mockingly sang, "Hail Columbia," a popular patriotic song. Another such occasion relied for its emotional punch, not on the sarcasm of captives, but on the brashness of captors. Jesse Torrey, a Philadelphia physician, was visiting the Capitol when he saw a coffle pass by in chains. A passerby explained that the white drivers of the caravan were Georgie men. The doctor walked up to one and inquired, in what must have been an accusatory tone, "Have you not enough such people in that country yet?" And the reply was, "Not quite yet," was the sneering reply. Now, I am reading from, let me make sure I can show you the book. The Half Has Never Been Told, Slavery and the Making of American Capitalism, because slavery, in fact, did make this economic system under which we are all living. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention because I want you to think about your ancestors who were on those coffles. And I want you to think about, by the way, it wasn't just men and women on those coffles. Also, children were on those coffles as well. So understand that, people. Children were on those coffles. Teenagers were on those coffles. And they could buy slaves from one region in America and then put them on a coffle and take them to another part of America. That is slavery and the making of capitalism in America. Now, the next book I'm going to read from is called Blake. Let me see if I can find it so you can see it. Here it is. Blake, or the Huts of America. Now, those of you who have been hanging with me following, you know that Blake's wife was sold away from him. And this set him on a course to get her back. Now, check this out, especially for those of you who are new to Readings with Regina. His wife was sold in slavery to Cuba because the rich whites would vacation in Cuba and they wanted to have their enslaved people with them. So Henry was married to this sister called Maggie, but while he was away on business, doing business with, or for, I should say, for his master sold his wife. All right. Now, this selling of his wife caused Henry, by the way, this is written by Martin Delaney. I'll tell you more about him another time. Anyway, the selling of his wife, that was just the last straw. That was the last straw for Henry to come home to Mississippi and his wife not be there. So it set the brother on a path towards, of course, he already hated slavery, but now he wanted to strike a blow, as Ida B. Wells would say. He wanted to strike a blow against slavery. So I'm skipping some of his novel just for continuity's sake. And there's a lot of extra characters in here that you don't necessarily need to know. So what Henry did, he got with his friends, Charles and Andy, on another plantation. And he told them, he said, look, I done figured out a way. We're going to strike a blow against slavery. So all three of these people are enslaved brothers. And they were like, well, what are you talking about? What can we do? How can we do it? Tell us your plan. Henry was very smart. So this is what he said. And I really want those of you all listening to me read this. I really want you to think about what I'm saying here. Because Martin Delaney, the writer, he didn't just spell out things. He placed them in metaphor. So picture this, it's three enslaved men together. Henry has come up with a plan to defeat slavery. He's about to share the plan with Charles and Andy, who are also enslaved. It is so just as I told you, so simple. It is that the trees of the forest or an orchard, they illustrate it. Flocks of birds or domestic cattle, illustrated. Fields of corn, hemp or sugarcane, tobacco, rice or cotton. The whistling of the wind illustrates it. The rustling of the leaves illustrate it. The flashing of lightning, roaring of thunder, and running of streams all keep it constantly before their eyes and in their memory. In their memory. So that they can't forget it if they would. Are we to know it? God grant it? I'll say it again. It's simple. Think of the trees in the forest. Think of flocks of birds. Think of fields of corn. And you know what, people? I want y'all who are listening to me to think about those things as well. I really do. I want you to think metaphorically. Now, I could go ahead and I could tell you what brother love means, but I don't want to do that. I want you to think about it. Okay? I want you to think about the metaphors that he gives as to how slavery can be defeated. Okay. Here's another part of the plan. This is Henry talking. Every blow you receive from the oppressor. Now, understand this was written in 1860, and Martin Delaney, the writer, is using the word oppressor because oppressor is like a modern word. This is how smart that brother was. Every blow you receive from the oppressor impresses upon the organization upon your mind, making it so clear that even Whitehead's Jack could understand it as well as his master. We are satisfied. The secret, they importuned. Well, then, first to prayer, and then to the organization, Andy said to Henry, nodding to him when they again bowed low and their heads to the ground. Now, what religion bows low with their head to the ground? I want y'all to think about that too. These are enslaved men, but look at how they are praying when they are by themselves. Whilst each breathed a silent prayer, which was ended with Amen by Andy. Whilst yet upon their knees, Henry imparted to them the secrets of his organization. Oh, that's great, exclaimed Andy. Capital, responded Charles. What fools we was that we didn't know it all along. All you have to do, this is Henry now, is to find one good man or woman, I don't care which, so that they prove to be the right person on a single plantation and hold a seclusion and impart the secret to them and make them the organizers for their own plantation. And they, in like manner, impart it to some other next to them. And so on and so on. In this way, it will spread like smallpox among them. Is there anything else for us to do, Henry? Inquired Charles. Yes, a very important part of your duties has yet to be stated. I now go as a runaway and will be suspected of lurking about in the thickets, swamps, and caves. Let me just stop for a moment here and just say this. This is where many of our ancestors ran. They ran to caves. They lived in swamps. They lived in the forest, in thickets, any place they could find where they would not be enslaved. I just wanted to highlight that. Then, to make the ruse complete, just as often as you think it necessary to make a good impression, you must kill a shoat. That's an animal. Take a lamb, pig, turkey, goose, chickens, ham or bacon from the smokehouse, a loaf of bread or crock of butter from the springhouse, and throw them down into the old waste well at the back of the old quarters, always leaving the heads of the fowls lying about and the blood of the larger animals. Everything that is missed, don't hesitate to lay it upon me as a runaway. It will only cause them to have the less suspicion of your having such a design. Now, check this out. I'm not going to tell you what he's trying to do. I'm not going to tell you. What do you all think this brother was trying to do by saying, kill these animals, spread the blood around, and then blame it on Henry? Now, I'm not going to tell you because I want you to think about what he possibly meant, okay? And I might share it with you next time we come together, but I'm not going to tell you now because I really want you to think about what this brother is doing. This is brilliant. All right. Now, what other part did I want? Okay. So before they parted, now remember these were deeply brothers who were friends, right? This is what they said: farewell, 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 my loving friends, farewell. Remember, he's gonna be a runaway. He ain't gonna see them no more. Farewell, old comrades. Now, comrades in the 19th century? Comrades? Oh my goodness. Martin Delaney used what we call modern language. Farewell, old comrades in the cause. I leave you here and journey on. And if I never more return, farewell, I'm bound to meet you there. Lord have mercy. Now listen to this. Listen to this. Insurrection shall be my theme. Insurrection. Y'all know what that means? Oh, I'm trying to get a comment up. Let me see if I can. Nope, I'm messing up terribly. Let me try this. Ah, Donna. Hello, my dear. Hello, hello. You got it? Yes, yes. And I still want you to keep thinking about it. I still want you to, but you got, yes, that is a part of it, Donna. You got it. Now she's referring to why, in fact, Henry would tell his comrades, Lord have mercy, I can't get over that word. He would tell his comrades to kill an animal and blame it on him. Very good. Very good. Okay, where am I now? Oh, but you wait till you hear this. Insurrection shall be my theme, my watchword, freedom or the grave. Now, who said freedom or the grave? Harriet Tubman. Yes. Liberty or death. Yes. Freedom or the grave. Up until from Rappahannock Stream to where the Quato waters live. Quato, by the way, that's a Spanish word in Cuba. It's a river in Cuba. One simultaneous war cry shall burst upon the midnight air and rouse the tyrant but to sigh, mid sadness, wailing, and despair, grasping each eagerly by the hand, The tears gushing from his eyes. With a humble bow, he bid them fondly farewell. And the runaway, Lord have mercy, the runaway was off through the forest. You hear that, people? You hear that, people? I'm going to repeat this because it's important. Black men and women who ran away and got away would live in caves. Yes, they did. For years. They live in swamps where the alligators were. They would live in the forest. Now, some of them during this time period would also go off to Native Americans' lands, all right? And they would, in fact, be incorporated inside of various Native American indigenous groups. In fact, this is a historical note that I'm giving you. Some of them created black and red dances together. When I say red, I'm talking about the indigenous people. I mean, they became that much a part of Native American culture, where in fact they shared dance. Because see, back then, you didn't just go to a club, you know what I mean, and just shake it on down for no reason. Dance had meaning. Can you imagine that? Dance had meaning. And I'll give you this one example before I check out of here today. I know I didn't get to Fred Douglass, and I meant to. I'm definitely going to get to Brother Fred next Tuesday when we meet. But I need to tell you this, especially for the sisters who are listening to me. Among Native Americans and among African people, dance was a part of their culture. It was a part of their spirituality. It was a part of their knowledge base. And for women, when a sister had her first menses, there was a dance. There was a dance for that. There was a dance and a feast for that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Why? Because then she could now bring forward more people into the group. This is what they believed. So the idea of a woman's body and a woman going from girl to womanhood, it was celebrated in dance among these indigenous cultures. Well, my brothers and sisters, oh my goodness, the time does fly. But I promise you, next time we meet, indeed, we're gonna read Brother Fred. Because see, I've left Fred. He's about to leave Talbot County and go to Baltimore. And Frederick Douglass had his first pair of trousers ever. So we really have to follow Fred and see what all did happen with that good brother. Okay? So, my good people, I'm going to sign off for now. And you know how I always sign off telling you how much I adore you, because I do. I wouldn't have created this series if I didn't. I look forward to all the good things that are going to happen to you in life. I look forward to hearing how you are connecting with your ancestors, because their spirit is around. I believe that. It's an energy source. So, until next Tuesday, I'm going to pray for you, and I'm going to always share my love for you. And I look forward to seeing you at that time. Bye now.